Hey friends, my name's Marty Scoveland Jr., and this is the Marty Party. So, brand new show here, and just to give you a little heads up, what I'm going to be talking about today, one, you're only going to hear from me. This isn't an interview show. It's just me talking. That's why I'm calling it the Marty Party. We're going to talk about, this whole situation with Somali daycares in Minneapolis. And before we get to that, don't worry, I'm going to tell you what this podcast is all about. So we'll spend some time there. After Minnesota, we're going to talk about Stranger Things. I'm recording this on January 1st, went to the theater today for it. So I'm very excited and going to talk all about that. And, with it being the new year, we're into 2026, first day of the year. We're going to do a little 2025 goal AAR after action review and some 2026 goal planning and talk to you all about my strategy and how I approach setting goals. All that being said, let's get this party started.
It's a Marty Party.
Usually I like to start off this episode. Not usually, this is the first one that I've done, but the way I had it planned out is I'd talk about a quote that I like. I want to, pull quotes off the books on the shelf behind me. And I want to kind of discuss how those apply to everyday life and everything. I didn't prepare one today because I want to talk about what is this podcast? What is the Marty Party? Some of you may be aware I have a separate podcast that I started last year called Subject Matter Expert. That's not going away. I'm still doing that. I love interviewing people. That's a interview format for a show where I find guests that are interesting, typically highly qualified in whatever they're talking about. And we get into, oftentimes some pretty serious stuff, but I've had a couple of pretty lighthearted episodes too. I'm not intentionally trying to be serious on every episode over there. But it is an interview show. It's about the people that I'm interviewing, not me or my thoughts necessarily. They creep in once in a while over there, but I wanted a space to kind of explore my own thoughts, kind of get a few things off my chest, as I, absorb news, absorb culture, make my way through life. I'm going to try to talk about things that are relatable to everybody here. Hopefully this is a little bit more of a fun or lighthearted type of podcast. I think that if you're looking for something that's a little bit of everything, a little bit of a general interest show, something that's easy to put on in the background that you don't have to pay that close attention to, or need something for your morning commute and you don't hate the sound of my voice or my silly Norwegian face, this might be the thing for you. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice that it's on a channel. Although this is a brand new podcast, you'll notice this channel has around, I think, 3,800 subscribers on it. No, I didn't go out and buy a bunch of subscribers or anything like that. I'm repurposing an old channel that had a bunch of subscribers on it that I hadn't published content to in years and years and years. Most of those subscribers came from a single video that I did way back when I was first learning how to even turn a camera on or tell a story. About 2014, I think it was, I made a video with a couple of my friends called Shit Rangers Don't Say. And it's insane. That's the first video I ever made and put up on YouTube. And that video did around 1.1 or 1.2 million views. Just absolutely insane. Just went, viral and really kickstarted my, venture into the media space, the media world. And it led to a lot of different things. That video was horrible. I mean, I think we had a couple of funny jokes in there, but like the editing, I think it was the first cut was like 27 minutes long or something like that, because I had no idea how to pace or cut or be judicious with what actually made it into a final cut. But it was, I guess the writing was good enough that enough people watched it and passed it around the military veteran community. And so most of these subscribers that you see on YouTube came from that video. So if you're one of these people that is tuning into this and clicked on this video, like, I guess I'm subscribed to the Marty Party. I don't remember subscribing to that. You didn't. You subscribed to a different channel. And I've repurposed this one. It's still me. I'm still that guy that you watched. If you subscribe to this channel because you watch Shit Rangers Don't Say, I'm the tall bearded guy in that video. Yeah, it's been a long time since then, a little over 10 years. So, I mean, if you're interested in what I've got going on these days, then stick around. I hope you do. If you're not into this sort of thing, or you're like, God, another fucking podcast, like another dude in his late 30s starting a podcast. Like, are we kidding me? Like, I totally understand. No hard feelings if this isn't your jam. You know, if you want to watch funny stuff on YouTube and that's what you subscribed for, I totally get it. I'm not exactly a comedian. So I can write a decent joke here and there, as I did in Shit Rangers Don't Say, but that's not necessarily what this will be. So again, if you're coming to me from YouTube here and wondering how you ended up here, how this showed up in your feed, that's kind of the genesis there. This show is also going to be distributed on Spotify and kind of all the other usual suspects for podcasts, you know, Apple Podcasts, all that sort of stuff. It'll go out on all those feeds too. So if you're listening from one of those places, disregard, you'll notice that I have 0 followers on Spotify for this account. I'll be shocked if this episode gets even 1 or 2 or 3 views or listens on or plays on Spotify or anything like that. I mean, I hope it does well, but I'm just setting my expectations extremely low for at least how this first episode goes. You know, I just even getting this set up, just so you know, coming to you from my basement. I didn't want to use the subject matter expert studio. I have a separate studio space for that. And I wanted a slightly different look and feel. I didn't want it to, somebody that came across the video to be like, wait, am I watching subject matter expert? Did they change the name to Marty Party? Like, no, that's a separate show, separate thing, separate vibe. This is totally different. So I brought this over to my basement. These are all my books. I haven't read all of them, if that's what you're wondering. So a lot of them I've used for research. I have read a decent amount of them, but still many that are on the to be read list, the TBR list. So got to take a little bit of coffee here. For this inaugural episode of the Marty Party, I'm using my dad's old mug. So shout out to my dad. He's not with us anymore, but thought he would think this was pretty cool. He was the original Party Marty. So I'm Marty Jr. So this is one for him. Yeah, it's late on January 1st, drinking the coffee. I don't care. I'm going to be up pretty late with this anyway. So, is what it is. And if you have any questions about what this is going to be, or, you know, what is the Marty Party? Like, you know, throw a comment on this and I'll make sure I respond. And I'd love to get kind of a good little community going in the comments section here where we talk about these things that I cover in the video. I mean, I don't want anybody to think that, like, when we talk about in a second here, Somali and Daycares in Minneapolis, like, dude, trust me, I am not the expert on that. I'm not a journalist that's on that beat or anything. A lot of this is just going to be my opinions, my take on stuff, things that I'm interested in talking about or I think is interesting. Don't cite me to your friends or family or anything like, well, Marty said this, and, you know, I mean, I'm not going to ever intentionally relay bad information or misinformation or anything like that. But just know that when I'm coming into this, I'm not doing some rigorous fact check before I hit record. Okay. Like, let's just be totally upfront about that. I'm here to just talk, get things off my chest, think out loud, and, you know, might as well welcome a few other people into my headspace, you know, if they're brave enough. So all that being said, that's kind of what this show is, but let's get that community going in the comments section. Let's talk about some of this stuff. Tell me if you think I'm wrong or had a bad take on something, or if you agree with something. I'm somebody that's never completely sold on anything that I think. I think if I'm 39 going on 40. Okay. And that's not super old, but it's not, I don't think I can call myself young at this point. And if there's anything that I've kind of learned over the years is that, man, I don't really know a lot. Younger me thought I knew everything. I mean, 8th grade version of me was arguing with teachers. I was so convinced I was right about everything. I've been humbled over the years. I've had things that I thought with 100% certainty and argued vehemently in support of. And then later in life was like, oh, man, I kind of got that one wrong or didn't have all the information or, so just know when I talk about stuff on here, sometimes I might be talking about things that I haven't even completely fully formed an opinion on yet, I mean, and I'm always open to new information. So if I talk about something on here that's got, that I got something wrong or that you have more information on or more context on, I'd love to hear about it. And I'm always happy to rehash some of these things. So, just know I don't have any ego about this stuff. I'm not trying to act like I'm the smartest guy on the internet or anything like that. I'm going to try to be real humble about this stuff, but I will say what I think. And we'll see how that goes. I might just embarrass the shit out of myself on a regular basis. That might just be how this show goes. We'll see. But all that being said, that's what the Marty Party is. I hope you stick around. I hope you tell a few friends about this stuff, about this show. And I hope that, we build a little following here. Like, let's get this thing going. I'm not doing this to keep it a small, hey, the 3 people listening to this are the only 3 people I ever want. No, like, let's set this thing off, That being said, let's get into a little hot topic. Every episode I want to cover some news. I want to hit some culture, and then I want to hit like a broader topic that maybe is just, things that I'm into at that time. Right. But we'll start with the news here. The thing everybody is talking about, I think it's the top news of the week, is a domestic issue. Sort of guerrilla reporter Nick Shirley went to Minneapolis and basically pressure tested a bunch of different Somali ran daycares around the city. And, according to the video that he published to YouTube, a lot of what looked like nefarious activity, maybe people that weren't completely on the up and up. Taking government money, taking taxpayer money to run an operation that is not what it is supposed to be. And that's really troublesome. This is on the heels of a larger discourse around the Somali community in Minneapolis and Minnesota and across the nation, especially as we look at the border crackdowns that are going on, ICE operations around the country, a lot of varying opinions out there. And it's definitely top of mind for a lot of people. So being from South Dakota, right next door, Minneapolis was kind of the nearest city to us. My brother was a paramedic in that city. My sister-in-law, a nurse in that city. My mom lived just outside of the city for quite a while there. I go there on a regular basis, have a lot of friends there. So I'm not a Minneapolis native by any stretch, but I am fairly familiar with the city and what's been going on over there over the years. And generally speaking, so number one, let's just cross this off the list. Anybody who thinks that the Somali refugees that came in the last, let's call it recent history, like last 5 years or so, that's not the case. Most of them came over around the time, if you remember the Black Hawk Down incident, Mogadishu, 1993. It was around that time frame, those early 90s, where a lot of the Somali refugees came over because there was horrific things going on in Somalia. And as we often do in America, we let a certain amount in and try to give them a new shot at life. Coming from a place where the only real option was, being a part of a militia, working for a warlord, committing atrocities, or being a victim of the aforementioned folks. And that's a shitty situation to be in. And so a bunch of them came in. The Midwest in general, the hometown that I grew up in, Huron, we've I don't live there anymore, but my hometown has welcomed in a lot of refugees over the years. The Hmong from Vietnam, the Karens from Myanmar, and there was some. I think in the early days there was like assimilation issues and some grumbling and stuff. But I would say the Midwest in general, South Dakota, Minnesota, they've always been, North Dakota, I believe, even falls in this category. They've really been willing to take in a lot of refugees whenever whenever that's on the table. And a lot of that is through the Lutheran churches. I grew up in a Lutheran church, and a lot of them are the ones that have said like, hey, yeah, bring them in. We'll help take care of them and things like that. Or at least that's the way it used to be. I'm not completely sure these days. So when we talk about the Somali community in Minneapolis, which is significant, we're not talking about a couple hundred people here. This is a significant portion of the population of the city. We're talking about a large group of people. And I think anytime you're talking about large groups of people, I am always hesitant to paint in broad strokes. Like, I don't want to say every Somalian refugee that has made a home in America in Minnesota or Minneapolis is a bad person or has bad intentions or anything like that. I also don't want to paint with broad strokes and say they're all good people. They're not. Like any community, they've got good people, they've got not so good people, and people that are up to no good and things like that. So I think this is a complicated issue, and we got to be careful not to just paint the entire group of people as, what are they doing here? They're all in on the corruption. They're all committing fraud. I don't think that that's the case. Okay. But there has been issues in Minneapolis for many years at this point. There is a crime problem. It's not just the Somalians, many of whom now that community, younger people, they're born in America. They're full on Americans. They're not naturalized or anything like that. They were born in America and they're Americans now. That's many of the people in that community. But even the ones that did come over on refugee status, over the years, now we're going up on 30, 35 years. A lot of them have been here. There have been issues in the city. There have been systems that have been put in place to support that have been overburdened. It takes a lot to support a refugee community, especially one that grows like that one did. And there has been crime that has happened. They're not the only source of it. Not by a long shot. I've heard my brother talk a lot, who, again, he was a paramedic in working some of the worst parts of the city. And I know that they're not the only ones causing issues. Some of them are, for sure, but they're not the only ones. And, when we look at this fraud that's going on, so Nick Shirley's documentary, I think it feels like it frames the situation like this is newly uncovered information. I think that's partially true. And the reason I say partially is because this fraud has been going on for a while now. There have been prosecutions. I think I saw one statistic where it said that there's been around 80 prosecutions, about 50 convictions, and all of that. So it's not something that was completely unnoticed. But what I would say is, was it getting national attention? No, it was getting local attention. I mean, you can look up the local newspaper articles and stuff from the Star Tribune and in Minneapolis there and other places. Was mainstream national media covering it? Not on a very regular basis. And I think sometimes those stories go underreported because reporters don't want to come off like they're painting like anti-immigration or anti-refugee or anti-minority or racist or any of those other things, right? And then the people like Nick Shirley that do cover it are called those things by some groups of people. Neither is right. But it has gone underreported for sure. And most people are coming to this information brand new, and it's new information to them because it has been underreported. So, Nick's article or documentary had a big impact. It was watched by a lot of people. It's been shared by people like Elon Musk and the Vice President of the United States, and it's got a lot of people's attention, and a lot of people have a lot of takes on it. And a lot of the things that have been said are like, good thing for Nick being out there. Where are the other reporters that, where's the media that should have been reporting on this? Well, again, there are news stories out there, but what hasn't happened, and this is where I want to give Nick some credit here. He went out and actually started knocking on doors. He really did that shoe leather reporting that used to be mainstream. And as we've seen local papers disappear, local reporters disappear, and the entire news media start to be completely what's the word that I'm looking for here? Be completely moved into New York City, Washington, D.C. I mean, those are the two big ones. And then L.A. and a couple of other major cities. But New York City and D.C. are the two big ones for sure. And things like just look at the entire institution of journalism was surprised by Donald Trump winning the election in 2016. Right? The 2016 election. And that's because not enough people are out there in the towns and the cities really getting to know America. And so Nick went out there and was like, yeah, I'm going to go sort of boots on the ground, go walk around and just report what I see. And that's what he did. And I think we need more of that. And I even saw a follow-up where CNN was saying, they interviewed him on the street or something like that. And then said they were working to verify his claims, and they showed a reporter kind of sitting at a desk and calling a bunch of different places. I'm like, yep, see, that's the issue. That's the difference between what most of the journalism institution is doing. They're working from behind a desk. They're making phone calls. They're doing internet research, things like that. They're not actually out there pounding the pavement. And that's what Nick did. And I think there needs to be some credit there. And I think that more newsrooms need to do that. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of individual journalists that want to get out there, that want to get out on the ground, want to get out from behind their desk, but their editors won't let them, or budgets don't allow it. And because a lot of the local papers have shut down, it requires travel from one of these other places to go to one of these places. And that requires budgets, and budgets in news media are extremely tight right now. So a lot of times the best thing that you can do, the only thing that you can do, is pick up the phone and start making calls. So I understand how a lot of people might want to get out there and do what Nick did, but for a variety of reasons, they haven't. And that's where a guy like Nick comes in and gets after it. Now, is he as seasoned of a reporter or journalist as anywhere else? No. Is he like many journalists? A lot of people are like, well, he's biased. He's a MAGA reporter and stuff like that. Well, yeah, I think he does have a political bias. But if I'm being completely honest, the days of the completely unbiased reporter feels like those guys and gals that population is getting smaller and smaller. And there's a lot of activist journalism that's out there, a lot of reporters that feel they have a moral duty to cover stories from a certain angle instead of in a completely unbiased way. And in that regard, even though he's on the opposite end of the political spectrum from most of the journalism industry, he's doing the same thing. He's coming into these situations with preconceived notions, preconceived ideas, political leanings, all of that. Right. And that's where it can feel a little bit of gotcha journalism. Some people I've seen online saying like, oh, he went to these daycares before they were open, or, it's some random dude walking up to a daycare asking to see the kids. It's like, would you let them? Like, those are somewhat fair questions to ask, I think, and say, and, does that completely invalidate everything that he found, though? No, I don't think so. Not by a long shot. But it does reek of that little bit of gotcha type of journalism and community editing. But to act like Nick Shirley's the only guy that's ever done that, like, get out of here. Like, that's not the case. That's literally not the case. That's happened at many, many institutions, many of the biggest papers out there, and news media for sure. That is a common thing. They've gone out there. It's just, again, it's usually coming from the other end of the political spectrum from what Nick Shirley is. For me, I was a journalist for a long time. I consider myself more of just an author now, but I do journalism in my work as an author. I'm not going out there and writing daily news anymore. I used to be the editor-in-chief at Task and Purpose. I was the editor-in-chief at Coffee or Die magazine that did a lot of really great reporting over the years. And I freelanced and wrote for a bunch of different places prior to those times. I was editor-in-chief at the Havoc Journal too, but that was more of an opinion essay platform than news like Coffee or Die or Task and Purpose was. And those publications were all very specific to the military, veteran, first responder communities, intelligence communities, that sort of stuff. So this is, and a topic that I'm somewhat familiar with, I've worked with a lot of journalists out there. And, I always strive, despite growing up in a very conservative household in South Dakota and growing up fairly conservative. I think anybody that, went to school with me growing up, K through 12, would be like, oh yeah, Marty was like a hardcore Republican and stuff. I've since come, I think, again, I don't know. I'm very aware of the fact that I don't know what I don't know. And so it's hard for me to be completely beholden to one party or one political movement. I find things that I like and agree with or disagree and dislike about both ends of the political spectrum. If you were to list out all of my different opinions on individual issues, I don't know, I'd probably fall somewhere in the middle. Some people watching this might say, oh, so you're a fence sitter. You're just somebody that doesn't want to. No, I'm aware of that. I know that I don't know everything. And a lot of times things that are initially reported end up not being true. And that is true on both sides of the political spectrum and in news media. And so I've seen politicians on both sides of the aisle do heinous, horrible things in the name of this country and on behalf of this country. I went to war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I'm far from some like war hero or anything like that. I have 0 valor awards, anything like that. But I got to look back at my time in Iraq particularly and say like, oh, that was something that I was completely misled on. And I was the biggest supporter in the world of that thing, and so it's hard now after being duped like that to come around and be completely entrenched in some political opinion, because I've seen how quickly the ground moves beneath you. And I can't be beholden to that. So as a journalist, I got a point here. As a journalist, when I was doing news reporting, I really tried to be objective and approach everything from a very neutral standpoint and remove my biases on any specific topics from the equation. I'm sure I wasn't completely perfect, but I really tried. I tried to be my own devil's advocate. I would actively argue against myself on and act against my own opinions and morals with greenlighting certain stories. And that was my way of saying like, okay, I'm being objective. I'm holding myself to the standard I want to hold other people to. I don't think a lot of people are even in the news media are even striving for that these days. If you are a journalist out there seeing this and you are one of those people, good on you. I know you're out there. I just think that those numbers are shrinking and more people feel like they need to report on behalf of their morals and what they see. And I think that's a slippery slope. I really do. I think we need more people out there, maybe people that aren't as biased as maybe Nick Shirley is on certain things, doing what Nick Shirley is doing. Like follow his lead, get out there and start asking questions, hit the pavement, talk to people. They're not going to bite you. You put yourself in some situations and they might, if you go out and cover protests and, go into dicier areas of certain cities, maybe, there's some danger involved, but like, that's the job of a reporter. That's the job of a journalist. So I applaud Nick Shirley for doing, what he did and doing the reporting that he did. And I think as he said in an interview of like, hey, I showed you what I saw and you guys can go do your own analysis. And yeah, go out there, go look. And there's lots of people out there trying to give context to certain things. And that's great. But he's the one that got the conversation going. And it is an important one. There is fraud going on. And although there have been convictions, although there have been plenty of, people prosecuted, I don't think it was even a drop in the bucket of what should have been happening. And I know Minneapolis is not the only city that is affected by this. This is something that more cities and more states need to take seriously. And in the past, you can go back and look at how different cities, I'm up here in New Hampshire, just barely an hour north of Boston. Look at Boston. They had to grapple with the mafia for years. Whitey Bulger, all organized crime, all of that, massive fraud, and it's still happening to this day in many cities around the country. So this is something that we need to continue to shine a light on. We should have, federal, state, and local law enforcement going after these folks and trying to make sure that our taxpayer dollars, when they're funding daycares that don't actually exist, that aren't actually taking care of children. Like that's a shame. Shame on us for, allowing a system like that to continue when so many people pay so much of their money into the tax system thinking it's going to do good, and it does do a lot of good. I'm not like an anti-tax person or anything like that. But it's something that we need to be confident when we pay our taxes every year. And everybody, if you're a W-2 worker, you have money taken out of your paycheck, every single paycheck, regardless of what your income level is. There are taxes withheld. You might get a lot of that money back depending on your income level at the end of the year when you file your tax return, but that's really just a 0% interest loan that you make to the federal government. And so at minimum, even if you're getting that money back, even if you're getting that 0% interest loan paid back in the form of a tax return in March or April or April or May, whatever that is, then what am I talking about? Most people get their W-2s and file in like January, and you're getting tax returns as soon as end of January, early February. So yeah, we need to know that when we are paying taxes in, that they are being used in a good manner and for the reasons that are legally allowed. And Congress sets the budgets, Congress does appropriations, and we need to hold them accountable too when those things aren't happening. Another big one is, there's fraud going on in Minneapolis. Man, the Pentagon hasn't passed an audit in years. It's been years. So this is happening even at the federal level in some of our biggest institutions. The military is one of the biggest line items in the United States government's budget. And the fact that they still can't pass an audit, like, that's not great. That is not great. And part of me thinks it's because certain things are being hidden within those budgets. And if they pass an audit, they're going to have to own up to certain things that money are being spent on. Use your imagination. Like, you're probably not wrong. Hold on, I need a little bit of another coffee here. And that's a shame. And so, do we need these daycares investigated in Minneapolis? Yes. Do people that are not American citizens who are not acting in a manner that is appropriate for being a guest in this country need to leave the country? Yeah. I mean, if you're breaking the law and you're not a citizen, then you probably need to leave the country. I'm not against deportations or anything like that. Again, I think there's a right way to do those. And there's a lot of opinions out there on what's going on. We've needed to get tough on immigration for a while now. We've needed to tighten up who we let into this country for a while now. It's been a problem across multiple administrations. Multiple presidents of both parties have said it's a problem and that they are going to try to tackle it. They've all had their own different approaches, but it's been a problem for a while. And I also want to make sure that we're careful. Like I said, in the case of the Somali community in Minneapolis, many of them are American citizens because they were born here, and they've got all the rights of any other American citizen. And if they're breaking the law, then they need to go to jail, not get deported necessarily. Not a fan of this idea of denaturalizing people either. If they were naturalized citizens, once you're a citizen, you're a citizen. I really believe that. So I'm not a big fan of the people that are suggesting that. But it needs to happen. So Nick Shirley, good on him for getting out there and trying to do some old fashioned on the ground reporting. Totally understand if you're on the other end of the political spectrum, we're oh, he's biased. And yeah, I get it. But, go out there and start doing the same style of reporting and do it the way you think it should be done. But I'm not going to be the critic that throws stones at a guy that went out there and went and got after it. Minneapolis has, they got a lot of things to deal with. Minnesota does. Tim Walz, again, do I think he should be thrown in jail or something? No, because prosecutions have been going on. Does he and the rest of the political establishment in Minnesota need to be held accountable in some way, though? For sure. Should these people be reelected when this has been going on under their watch? I don't know. Probably not. I don't know why you would vote for them when this stuff has been going on for as long as it's been going on. I don't know. I'm not a citizen or a resident of Minnesota, though. I don't live in Minneapolis. So, it's not going to be my fight, but I'm watching it closely. I go back to the city on a regular basis. I care about the people there. And, hopefully this gets cleaned up. And we'll wait and see how that develops over there. Next thing I want to move on to, let's get over into some culture here. Stranger Things. I'm wearing the sweatshirt. Been a fan for years. The show came out when I had first. So I a little bit of history on me. After leaving the military in 2013, moved to Colorado with my wife. That's where we had our first child. I started a business. That's where I recorded that aforementioned "Shit Rangers Don't Say" video, and had some good memories there. But at the end of our time there, we moved out because we decided to buy a van and go do the van life thing. That was around the same time that I discovered that I loved storytelling and wanted to go into journalism and writing books and making movies more than I did running the business that I was running at that time. And so we decided to move into a van, go see the country while our daughter was really young, before she was school age, and just kind of have this amazing trip and give me a chance to get my, the nice thing about living in a van is your overhead is super low. So when you're starting off as a budding journalist, you don't get paid very well, if at all. There's a lot of paid and exposure stuff that you do, and other places pay, but not a lot of money. And so it kept overhead real low. Well, we did that and we had a blast. We saw 44 states over the course of a year. At the end of that, that trip was actually cut 2 months short because we found out my dad had been diagnosed with ALS. Horrible thing. It's disproportionately affected the people in my family, but we were in Central California at the time we found that news, and we just made a beeline from there. Instead of continuing up the coast, the goal was to drive all the way up to Alaska. That was going to be the 49th state. Made a beeline from Central California over to South Dakota, called a buddy up, and his younger brother, also a friend of mine now, Carter, had a house for rent in town for reasonable price. And so we just parked our van outside of that house, moved in, and, we didn't have we were living out of a van, so we didn't have any furniture. We didn't have anything like that. And that was the summer of 2016. And it was that summer that we started watching Stranger Things. I think it came out that summer, I want to say. And I had heard about it from my friend Jared Taylor, who was, I don't know if I was talking to him or heard him talking about it, something, but he was raving about how good this new show was, Stranger Things on Netflix and all of that. And it's just like, oh, okay, I'm going to go check that out. And I just remember, we started watching that show from that little house in Huron for that year we moved back while my dad was sick. And we watched it off of my laptop. From me and my wife watching it on my laptop on a mattress that was just on the floor in a bedroom in this little 2-bedroom house. And, we didn't even have a bed. We just had a mattress on the floor and some, a whoopee and some blankets from the van. And we watched that show. That's how we didn't have a TV yet or anything. So we had to watch anything we wanted to on a laptop. And so that's how we watched season 1 of Stranger Things. And not only did I think it was a great show back then, was really entertained by it and thought it was just really unique. Now that I look back on it, and the series just came to an end today with this series finale that was released in theaters and on Netflix, I just look back to that time of my life and how far I've come, how different my life is, what I've done since then. I mean, I was just trying to make it as a journalist back then. I was dealing with my dad with having recently received a death sentence. There is no cure for ALS, so we knew how that was going to end. It was just a matter of when, not if. And I don't know, you think back about all those years, and I remember different seasons while we were locked down in 2020 and nobody could go anywhere. And, we watched Tiger King and, a season of Stranger Things. And it's just, that show is really good and it's so well done. It's kind of nostalgic. I was born in the mid 80s. So the show's kids are a little bit before my time, but all the references there are still very familiar to me as a kid that grew up in the 90s and into the early 2000s. Kids that are riding their bikes all over town and getting into trouble and things like that. Like, that was my childhood. And so there was something very nostalgic about that show. And, we've watched these people grow and the story grow, and the storytelling has always been really good. There's been a few missteps along the way. I think that one episode, I forget which season it is now, but that one episode where Elle goes to the city and gets into this like punk rock group, not not like a music group, but like, a bunch of street kids basically. And it was like a really weird one-off episode. It felt like a filler episode from the sitcom days, but this isn't a sitcom, nor is it like a 25 episode season. Like these are 6 to 8 episodes, I believe. And per season, like these are all like mini movies. Like that's just, there's no filler episodes when you're only doing 8 episodes a season. Dealing with a little cold here too. Everybody's sick this time of year, I guess, but yeah, dealing with that. But there's been some missteps along the way, but for the most part, Stranger Things has really nailed it. Set deck, costumes, acting, writing, the special effects, like every department just nails it every season. It's always so compelling and you just can't wait until the next one. Another miscue this year, episode 7 of this latest season, there's some controversy. I've been seeing it all over the internet. Will comes out as gay, and the actor in real life is gay, I think. And, they write this in, like, I don't have a problem with gay people being written into these shows or anything like that. But I will echo the sentiment of that scene where he comes out to all of his friends. It feels really forced. It's a little bit awkward. And it's not just me. I saw an interview with the actor that did that, who is gay. And even he was like, initially upon reading the script, was like, oh, really? Are you sure? This feels like a lot, And obviously they went forward with it, but like, the whole thing felt really forced. It felt a little virtue signally. And I think that there was a better way to go about it. I'm not gay. I don't want to speak for that community or anything like that, but just from a storytelling perspective, it felt like there was a better way to go about that. And also, just generally speaking, the show has turned into it didn't start this way, but it's turned into a lot of romantic relationships. There's multiple sets of characters that romance becomes the underlying theme for, that the subplot for each of these characters. And I just think that it got to be a little bit much. And, I do think it's an interesting development. You think about back in the early 80s, like being gay was during the Don't Ask, Don't Tell time period. Being gay is not as accepted as it is today and everything. I think that's one of the other things that bothered me a little bit about that scene is, even though his group of friends, they're a bunch of like art kids, drama kids, school newspaper, they're all probably people that lean more progressive and everything like that, even in the 80s. But progressives in the 80s weren't exactly that accepting of the gay community, And so I think for a show that constantly nails it on period specific things, that felt a little bit weird, where this kid, while they're going through this existential crisis, fighting multi-dimensional beings and just, the craziness going on, that he's like, yeah, this is the time I want to come out. And they tied into the story in that, like, hey, Vecna is using this against him, basically the secret against him. And so by telling everybody, it takes that potency away from Vecna's threats. So, I mean, that part is explained a little bit, I guess. But then the whole thing where just everybody's like, comes up and hugs, and each of them is, they go around the circle, and just the whole thing just felt like this isn't something that would happen in the 80s. I don't think. I think half those kids would be like, wait, what's a gay person? Half the kids in the 80s, I don't even think understood like what being gay was or what homosexuality was. It just wasn't a topic du jour like it has been for millennials and Gen Z and certainly Gen Alpha, later generations. This is, so I don't think it would have been that. And then even if they were okay with it, I think that they're probably most likely like kids in the 80s, it'd probably be like, there would be more jokes and like maybe accepting. And, again, these characters have been through so much together. I don't think that they would disavow and be like, oh, we're not your friend anymore because you're gay. Like, I don't think that would happen either. But like this whole touchy-feely thing that happened, like, I don't know that that's how things went. If you grew up during that time period and had different experience, one of your friends came out to a big group of you and you all went and hugged and like, okay, then I will eat those words. It just felt like it wasn't probably period specific. It felt like something that could have been done a little bit better. And I don't have a problem with the character being gay or anything like that. I don't have a problem with him necessarily coming out. It just felt like it could have been done better. I don't know. Maybe I'm an asshole for saying that. I don't know. But I love the show. I didn't think it took away from the overall show. I don't think it took away from the episode. I'm not one of those people that's going to give that episode a horrible rating. I guess it's one of the worst rated episodes. Like, I still don't think that episode was worse than the one where Elle goes into the city and meets up with all those like punk kids and everything. And they even tried to save that little storyline with the main character from that 8 being introduced in this season. So shit, I just realized I probably should have said, hey, spoilers in this if you haven't watched it yet. So I really apologize. I'll try to put something on the screen or something, but I feel kind of bad right now if you got into this and you haven't, and you're a fan of the show and you haven't watched the latest episodes of the latest season, and I just ruined it for you. I really hope I didn't do that. I'll try to put some sort of warning on this before I hit publish on this. But yeah, so, it's all controversial and plenty of funny memes too. People just making fun of that a little bit. So it's a little bit of a cultural moment right now. I think it's interesting. Overall, though, like I said, went to the theater with my wife today for the series finale. It's basically a movie. I thought for the most part it was really well done. After the main climax of that episode, the main resolution, they go into the kind of aftermath and like it's like 18 months later and how everybody turns out and stuff. That part felt a little bit drawn out. I'm not going to lie. There were some heartfelt moments in there for sure. I don't think there was a dry eye in the theater. You could hear sniffles. I could hear sniffles all around me. So I don't think that it was all terrible, but it's just one of those things where maybe it was a little bit too drawn out, especially after the main climax. That's a really drawn out sort of like third act, and this is, you have to remind yourself too, this isn't a movie, this is a TV show. So TV shows typically are like 4 or 5 acts, not a 3-act structure. So that's something to take into consideration too. Even though I saw it in a movie theater, it wasn't a movie. It was the final episode of a series, of a season and of a series. So that's something structurally, when I think about story structure and the flow and the pace and the editing and all that, I have to take that into consideration too and not compare it to a movie necessarily. But overall, I think part of the problem too, when I've already seen some people not happy with the final episode. I thought it was about as well done as any series finale I've been. It's really hard to wrap up an entire series. Unlike a movie, people get so invested in a TV show. They get to know the characters. It spans multiple years. Like I said, for me, I started watching this when my dad was sick and I was in a very specific point and place in my life that was 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, 9 years ago. People become emotionally invested in the storylines and the characters, and they will build a series finale up so much in their heads that it's almost impossible for people like the Duffer Brothers or any other series producers, showrunners out there who've ever had to wrap up a series. It's impossible to live up to those expectations. I mean, we should have high expectations. I think they're totally warranted. It was a great show. Should have high standards for how it ends. And I think they did a pretty good job. Like, are there little things that I could nitpick and say, I would have done this differently or that differently? Sure. But overall, I mean, I was happy with how it wrapped up. I liked the resolution. So all that being said, I don't know if you've never watched Stranger Things, I think you're missing out. If you are a Stranger Things fan, I'm curious what you think, leave a comment in the comment section in the episode. Like I said, I'd love to dive into it and hear your thoughts on it. From there, let's go into it. It is January 1st. It is New Year's Day. We are into 2026. It's late on January 1st at this point. I was really hoping to get this thing recorded earlier in the day, but I really wanted to talk about Stranger Things in this very inaugural episode of the Marty Party. And so I had to go to the theater. That was the afternoon, and then getting some final things set up down here, cameras, lights, making sure audio is working. I'm recording this a little bit later in the day, but it's still January 1st. It's still New Year's Day. And I want to talk about goals. I'm a big believer in having an azimuth, a compass direction that you follow through your year. I think it's really hard to go through life. I'm getting hoarse here. Yeah, keep this coffee going. Not the best coffee I've ever had or ever made. but it's doing the job. I need to up my coffee game again. It's been a minute since I quit working for one of a great coffee company. My coffee game has slipped a little bit. Need to up it again. Wet the whistle. All right. Ow now, brown cow. Keep this going. Keep the voice crisp. All right. So goals, 2025. I want to do a little after action review of my 2025 goals. So I have those on my phone here. I'm going to read off some of these. So I start off with goal themes for the year. My themes for 2025 were to be healthier, to lose weight. I'm a little bit heavier than I want to be, to read more. I do a lot of reading for work, but I want to read more books. I read so many articles and do so much research that I don't get as many books read as I'd like to. So many books behind me here I need to get through. So read more, decrease debt. We were still carrying some debt at the beginning of this year. My wife's student loans, vehicles, things like, it's a lot of the normal stuff, but I wanted to really take a big chunk out of that. I wanted to focus more on family. At the time I was working a job where I had to travel a lot. And when I was home, I was commuting across the country almost every week. And so when I was home, I wanted to do a better job of being present and not just chaining myself to the desk while I was home as well, on top of being gone all the time. And I wanted to focus on self-discipline. I put that in all caps because I think a lot of my issues, and I think this is probably true for a lot of people, stem from, what you need to do, the right thing to do, but you don't do it. For a variety of different reasons. So having that self-discipline to do the shit that you need to do, I think was absolutely crucial. And so I kind of bolded that one. So those are the goal themes. And then I get into specific goals here. There's a few that are kind of highly personal that I don't necessarily want to put out to the world. So I'm going to skip through a few. But starting with one here, run a half marathon. No, fuck it. We'll do the personal ones too. I want you guys to trust me here and know where my head's at. First one was get my wife pregnant. We've got 2 little daughters and we had a goal to have a third one. It's not a super straightforward process for us. And so that's why it was a goal and not just something we did. For a lot of people, it's just, hey, go conceive a baby, go bump some uglies and make a baby. For us, it's a little bit more of a thought out process and something that we've got to involve some medical folks in and all of that sort of stuff because of some complications from my wife's earlier deliveries. And so that was a goal. Next goal was run a half marathon. I wanted to start training in April and run a specific marathon, the Seacoast Half Marathon here in New Hampshire in October. It was on my birthday this year, and I thought that'd be a really cool goal. I wanted to get back up to deadlifting 400 pounds again. I've had some back issues from stemming from a few different things that happened while I was in the military, but it's been a little bit hard for me to deadlift like I used to. Some people don't believe in deadlifting at all. I wanted to get back up to a 400 pound deadlift. I wanted to lose 1 pound per week. I thought that was really achievable, ending at 224 by basically today. I wanted to finish a Norwegian 30K ruck march that I do in Minnesota, out in Minneapolis every year with a couple of my friends, an old ranger buddy of mine and another ranger. I didn't serve with him, but he's a former ranger as well that lives in the area. I wanted to read 12 plus books. I wanted to re-release a trade paperback version of my first book, Violence of Action. I wanted to hike Mount Washington out here. I wanted to reduce my total non-mortgage debt by at least 50%. I wanted to watch every movie that's won Best Picture at the Academy Awards since the beginning of the Academy Awards in the 20s. I wanted to successfully fill a deer tag this year. I didn't do that. I hadn't done that in 2024, so I wanted to make sure I filled a deer tag this year. It's hard up here in New Hampshire, man. It's a totally different style of hunting than what I grew up with in South Dakota. So it's been a challenge for me out here. Wanted to buy some new furniture for the house. I'm not going to list off every specific item that we wanted to do. We just had recently, at the beginning of this year, we'd only been in the current house that we're in for about a year at that point because we moved in Christmas 2023. So yeah, at the time of these goals, we'd been in the house for a year and it kind of figured out different pieces of furniture that we needed to add to the house to be a little bit more comfortable. wanted to run a 5K with my daughter, Lydia. I'd already been running for a while. I just wanted to do one with my daughter, Lydia. Want to take an international family vacation. Wanted to get my home gym set up in the garage, squat rack, all that stuff. I didn't have any of that. And I wanted to sign my next book deal. And then I had 3 stretch goals for 2025. Renovate my basement, reach 50,000 followers on Instagram. That's a little bit of a vanity metric, you might say. It's specifically because I need to grow my platform as an author, and that's going to help me get better book deals. It's going to help me sell more books. The more of a platform that I have, the better. It's part of my motivation in starting these podcasts, grow my platform, get my name and face out there a little bit more so I can be a more successful author. And then start jujitsu. I did jujitsu when I was in the military a little bit. I got my level 1 and level 2 certifications in the Army, and then just never really followed up with it after I got out of the Army by joining a jujitsu gym or anything like that. And so I wanted to get going in that again. So did I accomplish all of those? Hell no. Did not accomplish all of those. Did not get my wife pregnant. Wasn't the year for that. And I'll talk a little bit more about how the year actually went, but did not get my wife pregnant, did not run a half marathon. I haven't tested my deadlift. I think I am at over 400 pounds. Again, I've been using the 5-3-1 program to lift this year. And, I did like 325 for 14 reps the other day as my top set, to failure on the 5-3-1 program the other week. So I think that puts me, when you do the math on that, I think that puts me over a 400 pound deadlift. So I think I accomplished that one. I just haven't done a 1 rep max test on that to verify it. I did not lose 1 pound per week. I am starting the year roughly 10 pounds heavier than I began the year. Not fucking happy about that. Really just, again, self-discipline. I did finish a Norwegian 30K ruck march. I was really happy with that. That was a lot of fun out there. Second year doing it. And I did not read 12 books, unfortunately. Read a few, but not 12. I did not get the new trade paperback version of Violence of Action out. I did not hike Mount Washington. I did not reduce my total non-mortgage debt by at least 50%. I did not watch every movie that's won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. We got through 12 or 13 of them, and we just didn't keep up with it. So, we'll carry that into the new year. I did not successfully fill a deer tag. I'll get into more of that later. Didn't get a lot of the furniture. Got some of the furniture we were looking to get. Didn't get all of it. I did run a 5K with my daughter, Lydia. We did that, the Thanksgiving turkey trot. That was a lot of fun. Beat her by 2 minutes. Told her she's got to beat me next year. We did take an international family vacation for the very first time. Went to Costa Rica. It was a lot of fun. Had a complete blast down there. It was so cool to do a trip like that with my kids. I did get my home gym set up out there in the garage, squat rack, the whole 9 yards, put some horse stall mats down. It's fucking awesome, man. I'm super excited about it. It's part of the reason I've been able to make some good gains on the lifting program, is because I have that right there behind me. And then I did sign my next book deal. I'm working on a book about rucking with Jason McCarthy right now from Go Ruck. So pretty excited about that. And then out of the stretch goals, I did actually do one of them. I did start jujitsu. I ended up having another medical issue this year. I discovered a pretty large cyst on my back that has prevented me from going into jujitsu more recently, and some other things that have happened that have kept me away from it. But I got started, been on a little bit of a pause. I'm going to get right back after it. I'm really anxious to start getting those first stripes as a white belt and really learn and further ingrain myself in the jiu-jitsu community here in New Hampshire. So a lot of big goals there. Why didn't I accomplish a lot of these things? Well, I want to talk about the year a little bit. I put a post out the other day talking about it. It's been a little bit rough for me this second half of this year. This first half of the year started off awesome. I was the VP of social media and influencers, social media strategy, all that stuff at Black Rifle Coffee. It was a big career goal of mine to, make it to that VP level, to become a marketing executive. That was after I left kind of the day-to-day journalism behind. That was a huge leap for me to go from that into marketing and being an executive in that space, and apply a lot of what I'd learned over the years. And, I was working on these challenging problems. It was not an easy job. Very challenging, but I loved the work. I loved the people that I was doing it with, and it challenged me every day, and I loved it. we took that vacation. We got a new puppy. I signed my new book deal. Had a lot of really good things. I got a lot of dental work done, did a full blood panel that gave me a lot of answers on why I've been feeling a certain way about a lot of different things, to include the weight gain. I got some answers in a path forward. The first half of the year was so positive. And then at almost exactly the midpoint, end of June, early July, I departed my position at Black Rifle Coffee. That was pretty hard. I had to say goodbye to a lot of close friends and teammates over there that I really loved working with. And the puppy that we'd got started getting Giardia on repeat. And so I couldn't get more than an hour or two of sleep at a time. And it was worse than having a newborn. It was every night, multiple times a night. I'm wake up to a barking puppy that had shit all over her crate, spraying diarrhea everywhere, and cleaning that up multiple times a night, multiple times a day. And it would go away for a couple of days with medication from the vet. Take her to the vet, get some medication. Oh, it's gone for a couple of days, and then it started all over again. We couldn't get rid of it. Tried a lot of different things. It was tough. My wife had a medical scare, a medical emergency that she could have very easily lost her life over. And that was tough. She ended up having to stay in the ICU for 3 or 4 days. And that was really tough. We got some tough news about another family member that has just recently passed away. We had multiple, right after my wife got out of the emergency or from the ICU, the puppy, the aforementioned puppy, we'd finally kicked Giardia. She went and ate a fucking ball of yarn. She's a purebred black lab. If you know anything about dogs, she's like the pinnacle black lab that just is very food motivated, very mouthy. She got into some yarn, and we discovered a string coming out of her butt, and yep, it was bad. We took her in, and they were like, yep, this is bad. Had to put her into emergency surgery. That got an $8,000 emergency vet bill. On top of that, my truck had to go into the shop for fixes. So I was driving a fucking rental car that sucked that I could barely fit in for a while. And that was an expensive fix too, even with insurance. Fucking insurance, man. I got real heartache about all varieties of insurance these days. I'm sorry if you're an insurance agent, but I got some real strong opinions about that business model these days. But the truck had to go into the shop. Our furnace broke. That was an expensive fix. Our dryer broke. Multiple attempts to try to get that delivered in snow and stuff. These are just things off the top of my head, again, just repeated medical emergencies of both pets and humans. And it was like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. All while I'm trying to, some positive things happened. Like I went to a couple of Vikings games. That was awesome. And, I got subject matter expert going, my new podcast, and I'm starting this one now. So there were some positive things, but by and large, I really slipped into a very negative mental health space. I was not my best self as I was dealing after it. I think I just got crisis fatigue. It was crisis after crisis after crisis. And I'm still tired. I'm still trying to rebound from all of that. And I'm trying to tell myself, new year, it's going to get easier. It's just, I feel like I'm standing at the bottom of a deep well, and it's like, okay, only place to go, just start climbing, 1 foot in front of the other. You've done hard shit before. You're no stranger to doing hard things. I've been through a lot in my life, and I can get through this too. And some of these problems I could even call some of the non-health things that are the champagne problems. Like, oh, boohoo, your furnace broke. Well, you at least own a house, and it's a nice house. So some of these things are like champagne problems that I would have loved to have had 10, 15 years ago, So, and that's affected my writing, all of that. It's affected my ability to accomplish some of my goals. I've just been constantly stressed out. I've been a very short temper, just not the person I wanted to be. And it's affected every facet of my life. And that's why I didn't accomplish a lot of goals. So 2026 has to be better. All right. That's the 2025 AR. A lot of room to improve. Didn't accomplish some goals that I set out to accomplish. Not all of them. And so we got to do better in 2026. All right. So let me walk you through, first of all, my philosophy around goal setting. All right. You can use this. So I'm a big believer in goal setting. Obviously, we've already talked about that, especially around the new year. I get very nostalgic this time of the year. Even for this New Year's Eve for me, was very negative because it's just been through so much. It's been hard for me to see the light recently. And even still a little bit nostalgic. I still captured some of that magic. And this is when I do my goal setting. And I encourage all my kids and nieces and nephews and siblings to set goals as well. And I like to start off with themes. Okay, what are the themes? Be healthier, lose weight, read more, right? These aren't specific. They're just the themes for the year. You got to set, what are your themes this year? What are the things that the general ideas, the thesis statements that you're going to rally around in order to accomplish these other goals? And so once you have your themes written down, from there, you want to use the SMART acronym. Well, some of you people that maybe come from corporate America and things like that maybe have heard this before, but SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Okay, so your goals need to meet all or most of those, or your set of goals should represent all of those things. Not every one of them needs to be measurable, but many of them should be. Not every one of them needs to be time-bound, but most of them should be. Time-bound might just be, hey, I want to do this in 2026. Measurable might be not just lose weight, but I want to lose X amount of pounds. Achievable, it's like, hey, if you're not currently in the astronaut program, then setting the goal of like, I'm going to go walk on the moon is maybe not an achievable goal for you. If you're not currently in the astronaut program, right? Like set achievable, realistic goals and relevant. How are these going? The specific goals, using the SMART acronym, how are they going to support your themes for the year to move you closer to your long-term strategic goals, which are another set of goals. These are sort of inter-year goals. You should have your long year, like 5-year, 10-year type goals as well. How are these building up to that? And how are they making you the person that you want to be? The person that you want to look at in the mirror every morning, right? Like I think a lot about that. So goal setting doesn't need to necessarily be so formal. I tend to myself make it a little bit formal, but it doesn't need to be super formal. But you should write them down, I think, all the same. And if you need a place to start, these are a few prompts that maybe you can use. Think about the different categories of goals that you might use. These might be derived from your themes. You might start other categories, though, outside of the themes. Some of the categories that I kind of break mine down into are professional or career goals, physical or athletic goals, education goals, relationship goals, spiritual or religious goals, mental health goals, financial goals, family goals, travel goals, and personal interest goals, right? Those are kind of the different categories for me. So I try to get at least one goal that is using the SMART acronym into each of those and have it support one of the themes I have for the year, if that makes sense. I think it's okay if you have a very mundane set of goals. Like if one of your goals is just organize the basement, or organize the garage, that's okay. That's a perfectly acceptable goal. For me, one of the years it was like go to the dentist because I hadn't been to the dentist for years and I paid for that dearly later on. But 1 year, one of my goals was just like literally make an appointment to go to the fucking dentist, super achievable, right? Like not everything needs to be huge and all that, So you should also have a few, while still achievable, but BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. All right. I did not come up with that term, but it's a good one. Big, hairy, audacious goals. Like I want to run an ultra marathon and maybe all I can do right now is run a 5K or a local mile, right? You can do that in a year's time. That's still achievable. You're going to work your ass off if you want to do that, but you can achieve that. And that's a big, hairy, audacious goal. Make $1 million and you currently work at McDonald's or something like that, right? Like not completely unrealistic. You can do that. You might say I'm going to teach myself day trading and start doing that, or I'm going to become a crypto millionaire or whatever. There's ways to do that. And if you want to hustle and start a business or whatever, set those big, hairy, audacious goals. So have the mundane, normal stuff. Have your sort of medium, middle of the road, this would be nice to achieve and is very realistic. And then the big, hairy, audacious goals are man, I don't know if I can do this, but let's put it down and give it the old college try. give yourself room and grace to not accomplish every one of the goals that you make. Do not beat yourself. Like I said, I didn't accomplish a lot of my goals from 2025 for a variety of reasons. Why? Fucking life happens. Okay. Give yourself a little bit of grace. Understand that things are going to get in the way. You'll be able to overcome some of them, but not all of them. And some of the goals you might start the year being motivated about this one thing, like start jujitsu. And then you go roll a few times, go to a few, like, man, this ain't for me. I don't really enjoy this. Like, I got some big fucking hairy dude like all over. Like maybe it's not your thing, you know. You might say I want to go run an ultra marathon, and then you like get up to like doing 10-mile runs and be like, you know what, I think I'm going to call it a marathon because I don't really want to put my body through what it requires to do an ultra now that I've seen what it requires just to run a marathon. Those are okay to modify those and just not meet those. You know, there is a little bit of that mentality of like shoot for the stars and you'll still land on the moon, or shoot for the moon and you'll still land on the stars. Whatever that analogy or that saying is, right? But like, so it's like, okay, it's like, oh, I want to lose 50 pounds and you only lose 25. Well, that's still fucking awesome. Congrats, you know, but give yourself grace and don't construct goals in a way that makes it so like, if you don't accomplish every one of these, you're going to feel like the year was a failure, an abject failure. Don't do that. All right. You know, write these down and hopefully this time next year, you'll be able to look at everything you did and all the effort that you put out and kind of just say like, that'll do, pig. That'll do. Pretty happy with how the year went. For me, I'm not particularly happy with how the year went, not because I didn't accomplish all my goals, because it's just some of the shit that happened. You know, it was too much, and particularly the second half of the year. And it's like, man, don't want to repeat that. You know, a little bit of what turned out to be a very Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, you know, best of times and the worst of times, tale of two cities quote there. It was that sort of a year. First half was amazing. Second half was largely, with a few bright spots for the most part, very shitty for me. And so I'm looking into the future here, into 2026, and be like, man, subject matter experts going well. I'm enjoying the hell out of interviewing people. I'm starting the Marty Party here to have my own little, you know, just me talking to the camera here, connecting with an audience on a more personal level. I'm working on an amazing book. I've got other writing projects too. You know, I'm taking a stab at Substack and some of these other things. And, you know, lifting is going well. I'm on, like I said, I got a full blood panel earlier this year that gave me a lot of answers. And so my life is improving in many different ways. And it's going to lead me to accomplishing some of my goals, like losing more weight, becoming more healthy, becoming the type of person that can say without feeling embarrassed that, yeah, I'm a former Army Ranger. You know, like I take pride in the things that I did in the past. But right now, when I look in the mirror, I feel embarrassed to say that I did some of the things in the past. And I don't want you to take this as like I'm in horrible shape. I've hiked Mount Kilimanjaro twice. It's a lot harder on me than it should have been because it's heavier than I should have been. You know, a lot of those things, but I need to be healthier. And I turned 40 in 2026. I got to quit fucking around, you know, and get serious about my health. And so that's a big one. But those, you know, laying that groundwork in 2025 was really important. So it's part of this is going to be building on some of the bright spots of 2025. So 2026 is going to be good. If you haven't wrote your goals down, start with some themes, tinker around with a few different categories that I gave you there, write your goals down, and then go out there and try to knock them out. Okay. You're going to feel better about your year at the end of the year if you've been able to accomplish a few goals. You'll be proud of yourself. You'll set a good example. If you've got kids, setting a good example for your kids, you'll be a better partner to your girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, whatever. Like, goals are a good thing. Set them, go after them. That's all I'll say on that. I want to do a little bit of a recurring segment about something that I just think is pretty neat. And I've got this thing. It's a little bit weird. It's not always going to be like a material thing. Sometimes it will be. Sometimes it'll be other things. We already talked about Stranger Things, so I don't want to talk about, say, my pretty neat thing is the Stranger Things finale. I want to talk about, I got to literally take it off, but I have been wearing these Doc Marten boots since I was a sophomore in high school. I'm 39 years old right now, okay? I bought these. They cost me like a whole paycheck, and they were really popular. Like every kid in school had them, and I wanted them. My parents couldn't afford them, so I had to work really hard to go buy them. And I bought them from the shoe store and in Huron. And I was like, oh, these are going to last me. They're good leather boots. You can wear them with jeans through the winter, all that sort of stuff. You can kind of dress them up a little bit, dress them down. I don't have the same shoelaces on them anymore, but this pair of boots, man, since I was a sophomore in high school, you know how many I have partied in farm fields in the middle of South Dakota as a 16, 17, 18-year-old, made horrible decisions in these boots, made great decisions in these boots, gone on dates with my wife in these boots. I have worn these things through thick and thin for over 20 years at this point. I would have got them. I was a sophomore in, I think, 2002. So around 23 years I've had these boots now. Same pair of boots, different shoelaces now. I've gone through multiple sets of shoelaces, but the boot, I probably need to put some leather conditioner on this or something. The toes are getting pretty worn at this point. The treads are still pretty decent though. You know, like those are pretty decent. The other great thing about Doc Martens at the time, I have a size 15 foot. Hard to find shoes that fit. Most shoes are like 7 to 13 or 7 to 14. Doc Martens made a size 15 that fit. So that was another really clutch thing for me. But that's I think these are pretty neat, man. 23 years, same boots, still wearing the same shoes that I was wearing as a sophomore in high school. Are you kidding me? Like, that's pretty awesome. Let me know in the comment section below if you also have a pair of these boots or ever did have a pair of these boots, if you wore them in high school or middle school or anything like that back when they were really popular. These are pretty awesome. Classic too. They still hold up. I'm not going to try to put that back on now. I'll do that after I finish recording. Man, I was worried I wasn't going to be able to talk long enough to make this worthwhile for people, but I think we've been going for a decent while now at this point. Over an hour. Wow. I thought I was going to struggle to hit a half an hour. Not too bad. Well, thanks for coming to the Marty Party. Join me again next week. I'm going to release these every Thursday. Subject matter expert will be on Tuesday on that channel. If you're following this, the Marty Party is going to come out every Thursday. It's going to be roughly this format. I'll talk about news, culture, and then life shit every week. You know, I'm going to have a quote every week too. I didn't have one today because I wanted to just intro the whole concept of the Marty Party. And, you know, if you like the show, you know, subscribe if you're on YouTube, follow if you're on Spotify or one of the other platforms, and turn on the notifications if that's an available feature. For YouTube, it is for sure. Turn the notifications on, and you'll never miss an episode. And that's pretty awesome. Leave me a comment below let's start to build this community out a little bit and talk about the things that I talked about for a while on here. Anyways, we'll see you later.
It's a Marty Party. It's a Marty Party.